Have you ever felt like you're playing a game, but you don't know the rules? Or worse, that someone else wrote them and forgot to tell you? Today, we're diving into something called the science of the underdog. And it's this really radical idea that says the rules for winning and losing aren't just about hard work. They're actually hardwired into our biology. And the crazy part? Most of us have no idea this is even happening. So our guide for this whole deep dive is this provocative book by J.T. Ingram called Bark More, Wag Less. And look, this is not your typical self-help book. Not at all. It's really proposing a completely new way to look at why some people just seem to get ahead, while others, well, they get left behind, no matter how much effort they put in. And that really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? It brings us to this question that I bet a lot of you have asked yourselves. Have you ever done everything right? You followed the rules, you put in the hours, you had that killer idea, and then nothing. You just felt totally invisible. If that sounds familiar, if you've ever felt that specific kind of frustration, then you're going to want to hear this theory. All right, so here's the central idea, the big claim the book makes. It says that for so many of us, when we keep hitting a wall, the problem isn't our motivation. It's not about attitude, no. The problem, this book argues, is actually buried deep down in our biology. Okay, so that brings us to our first big idea here, what the book calls the failure paradox. And it's really the central mystery it's trying to solve. Why is it that really talented, valuable people so often just fail? Why don't they get the recognition they absolutely deserve? And the author, J.T. Ingram, he actually lived this. He talks about this time in his own life where he had the skills, he had the experience, the drive, but everything he tried just hit a dead end. He was doing everything right, but the stuff that used to work, it just stopped working out of nowhere. So what gives? What is actually going on here? Is it just a crazy string of bad luck? Is the strategy wrong? Or, and this is what the book suggests, is there some kind of hidden biological system running in the background that we don't even know about? A system that's literally deciding who gets noticed and who stays invisible. All right, so to explain this whole biological system, the book uses this really powerful metaphor. It's a way of looking at how society is kind of secretly structured. And the argument is, but just under the surface of our modern, civilized world, we're actually operating a lot like a pack of animals. So at the very top of this social pack, you've got the alpha, right? These are the born leaders. And society just instinctively looks to them. It sends out this unspoken, unconscious message that says, we expect you to lead. And for them, power and attention, it just seems to flow their way. It's natural. Next up, you have the underdog. This is the follower, and the social expectation for them is just as clear, but it's totally different. The message is, we expect you to follow. Their job, essentially, is to support the alphas, to keep the current system running smoothly. And then, at the very bottom, there's the runt. And this is where the primal, almost brutal logic of the pack gets really clear. The unconscious message sent to them is just harsh. It's, we expect you to die. I mean, in this kind of system, the ones perceived as the weakest are basically seen as disposable. Now, here's the really crucial part. This whole system, it operates completely beneath our conscious awareness. The book argues that this pack dynamic isn't about logic. It's rooted in these deep biological cues. We're talking about things like scent, stress hormones, even tiny, subtle shifts in body language. And our brains process all of this instantly, sorting people into these roles way before our rational minds even have a chance to chime in. Okay, so if this hidden hierarchy is real, then how does it stick around? How is it maintained? Well, the book says it's reinforced by a bunch of myths. These are ideas that sound really good on the surface, but they mostly just help out the people who are already at the top. Let's dig into a couple of them. All right, here's a big one we all know, karma. The whole what goes around comes around idea. If you do good things will happen to you. It's a nice thought, right? And it's something you hear from successful people all the time. But the book's counter-argument here is pretty sharp. It says that karma feels true for the alphas because, well, society is already wired to reward them anyway. But for the underdog, the person who's so often invisible, their good deeds just go unnoticed. They go unrewarded. And for them, the whole idea of karma can start to feel like a pretty empty promise. Okay, here's another myth, or maybe an accusation. If you ever dare to point out that the system seems unfair, what do you get told? You're hit with this classic line. You just have a victim mentality. But the book reframes this completely. It argues that this accusation is actually a really powerful tool that alphas use. It's a way to just shut down legitimate complaints. It makes sure that the people at the bottom end up blaming themselves for their problems instead of, questioning the actual system that put them there in the first place. So all of this leads to some really specific and honestly kind of surreal experiences that people who are overlooked all the time go through. And what the book does, which is so smart, is it gives these experiences names. It turns them from just these lonely personal frustrations into actual recognizable phenomena. First up, we have what the author calls the curse of Cassandra. Now, this comes from an old Greek myth about a princess who could see the future perfectly, but she was cursed by a god so that nobody would ever believe her. It's really the ultimate metaphor for being right, but having absolutely no power. And here's how that curse plays out in the modern world, in 4 painful steps. 1, you have a world-changing idea. 2, you're totally ignored, maybe even discredited. 3, some time goes by, and an alpha presents your exact same idea. And 4, that alpha is celebrated as a genius, a visionary. It's an incredibly painful and invalidating thing to go through. And then there's something called the Berra effect. It's named after the famous baseball player Yogi Berra. The guy had some of the best stats of his time, just objectively amazing. But he was somehow left off a list of the 4 greatest living players. Just bizarre. And that's what this effect is. It's when you are hiding in plain sight. You're undeniably skilled, you're excellent at what you do, but for some reason, people just don't see you. So the big question is, if you're all caught in this biological system, what do we do? Is there a way out? How do you actually change your rank in the pack? Well, this final section gets into the book's core strategy, and it's all right there in the title. Bark more, wag less. Now, it's really important to understand what this actually means. This is not a call to become a jerk, to be aggressive or hostile. The book is super clear about that. It's not about being a biter. It's about a strategic shift. It's about making a conscious choice to completely change the way you interact with the world. So here it is, the core takeaway. Wag less means you stop trying so hard to please the pack. You stop focusing on making the alphas comfortable and just waiting around to be noticed. And bark more, that means you start advocating for yourself, you start making some noise about your value. You demand to be seen and heard, but on your own terms. And that leaves us with one last really powerful question, a question the book really puts to every single one of us. The pack, society, it has already given you a rank. It has unconsciously told you where it thinks you belong. So the only question that really matters is, are you going to accept it